welcome to the fourth branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the fourth branch program. Welcome. Today, as we discussed yesterday, we're going to talk about a few issues. Although we will also address one of our staple items, race relation in America. We will take a little bit of time in the beginning of the program to talk about those issues first before we tackle race relations. If you join us for the first time, again, welcome. We have been doing this program for quite a few months now, and we have on the People Branch YouTube channel a number of videos that are archived there. Videos which provide information about various issues that we have already talked about. It really varies, and there are at least on that site almost 500 videos of different topics. And while you're there, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel in order to receive invites, updates, and also other activities that you may have an interest in. If you have the time, I would suggest you also follow me on Twitter as well as on Facebook. We have a number of activities that are going on, and you may have some interest in them. So the only way we would be able to let you know about those is, of course, if you subscribe to the People Branch YouTube channel, or you follow me on Twitter and on Facebook. As soon as those activities become available, we will alert everybody, and if you in that list, you will know about it immediately. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about Medicare Part D. We will skim over tax reform. We have talked about at great length. We will touch on the Green New Deal. We will also talk a little bit about something that it has been an issue in the country for quite some time. It's entitlement and wealth distribution or wealth redistribution, depending on which way you look at it. And we will talk about those issues in tandem, both the wealth redistribution and entitlement and the entitlement cut aspect of it. We will talk about those two together because they do indeed they one of the same, one coin. It is one coin with two different sides. So we will approach those together. But most importantly, every time we decide to discuss any of those issues, it's not just for the sake of discussing them. We discuss those issues because they have some impact on the country. They have some impact not only on this generation, but some of those legislation their impact could be far-reaching, down to several future generations. And because of that, as we mentioned many times here in this program, the purpose is not to make anybody feel good, or it's not to corroborate your ideas or to strengthen your position, but rather to present to you issues that we as a people, we elect officials to attend to those issues, but more often than not, they do not attend to any of our issues. They simply interested in their own selfish agenda. Now, I will also show you that although all politicians, they are as selfish as, well, the next person, and they also lie to the constituent. But I will present to you an aspect that show you, for reason that I'm not sure I understand just yet, but Republican legislators, they have become masters of deception. But that's not really the part that is of most concern to me. What I look at as more important is the fact that the constituent, the Republican constituent, seems to go along with legislation, seems to continue to support individuals who actually work against their own interests. That part, I must say, in all fairness, it has baffled me, and I have yet to understand especially the not so much the legislators aspect or the elected official aspect, but rather the constituent aspect. And the reason I mention that is because it is one thing that you have politicians lying to you, or you know that they're not doing anything for you. They just go there and they just talk and talk and never get anything accomplished. But it's a whole different issue when those people that you elect, you vote in office, when they do things that are actually detrimental to our interests. That is a whole different ballgame, because it's not that it's okay for politicians to do nothing. It's not that it's okay for them to be self-serving, but at least you'd say we can live with that. But when politicians work, do things, pass legislation that are against our own interests, now it is almost impossible for me to comprehend why would those same constituents continue to vote those same politicians back in office. Now, I do have later on a very important individual who had made who wrote a book, and it seems that at least it gives us a peek into why that is. Now, we did mention before here that we have come to understand as to why the Republican constituent continue to vote in office those who actually work against them. Now, some people see that as gibberish, but if you look at each case and you look at to different people, and you get to find out that indeed it's true that they rationalize the reason that they continue to vote the same people who work against their own interests back in office. Now, part of it is ignorance. Yes, part of it is complete ignorance. And now that also is a complex aspect of the conversation. And the reason is because even individuals who act out of ignorance believe that they actually acting based on information that seems to be logical to them. And that's why it's becoming more and more complex every day for me to try to figure out the best approach to explain that making a mistake is human. Anybody can make mistake. In fact, Marcus Cicero said that any man can make mistakes, but only an idiot persists in his error. Now, any man can make mistakes, so we expect anyone, everyone, as a matter of fact, to make mistakes. But if you make a mistake and that is brought to your attention and you continue to do it, it can no longer be construed as a mistake, because now you are in possession of information, of knowledge that tells you that what you're doing is wrong. A very simplistic example, for instance, would be something to the effect of, if you know that 2 plus 2 are 5, hey, it's a mistake. Well, let's take a different example. If you were to say 2 times 3 are 5, now it's a mistake, right? Because you may have not paid attention to the fact that it's not 2 plus 3, it's 2 times 3. Now you say 5, then it's a mistake. But what if someone come and tell you that, you know, 2 times 3 is 6, but you continue, for whatever reason, you decide you want to stick to 2 times 3 is 5. Now, you just fall into the category of ignorant, because any man can make mistake. But when the mistake is brought to your attention, if you continue to do exactly the same thing, now knowing that it's a mistake, now you fall into the category of ignorant. And sooner or later, the ignorance will turn into stupidity. Because, and it's not just, you're not just hurting yourself by choosing to be ignorant. And that's the only reason, because sometimes we come here, and I can tell you, I am exhausted, not physically, but mentally exhausted to try to understand how in the world any individual could make decisions that actually are detrimental to that individual. Sometimes I feel as if, what's the point? And at times I must say, in all fairness, that I had considered the possibility of just simply walking away from the whole thing. But every time I remember that I have kids, which means the next generation, then I realize that this is much bigger than myself, because I'm not doing that for me, because I don't think I will live long enough to see that there is enough progress made in this aspect. But I would like to see that at the very least future, or at least leave behind that future generations will be able to have a better life, would be able to enjoy a better environment, because at least whatever I'm doing today, hopefully it brings some fruit, and some people will get to their senses and realize that, yes, it's not about us today. It's not about instant gratification. It is about future generations. Because if you are a parent, you know that whatever you're trying to do is to better the lives of your children. Now, that is great because at least you recognize that's part of what you have to do in order to leave a better future for your children and your grandchildren. But if at the same time you are supporting individuals, legislators, governors, mayors, if you're supporting individuals who are doing things, passing legislation, laws that are detrimental to even your own interests, how do you think, if they're doing it today and it's impacting you, and you can fast forward to the future, how much harm are they doing to future generations? So that's really the essence of the fourth branch. Not for me to feel good about myself, not for me, yes, I guess if I live long enough to see an improvement during the time that I'm alive, great. But I do not expect, because changes are not things that happen overnight, because people have been in living a certain way, and it takes a very long time for them to get out of that lifestyle, because everybody likes instant gratification. For instance, for a good example, that people go to buy fast food, they buy fast food because, well, one of the reasons is because they don't have to labor over making the food. They just stop someplace and order the food and pay for it. Instant gratification. And we've all been there. So I understand that. But when it comes to the country, when it comes to life, when it comes to future generation, we cannot just look for instant gratification and figure out, well, future generation will just do what's necessary to be done. This is our job. We as part of this generation, it falls on it becomes our responsibility to do things, to live a certain way, to act a certain way that guarantees future generation will have a much better life. So the idea of cheering for ignorance or sticking to your gun because, well, you feel better this way or you feel gratified by it is also selfish. So while I'm pointing that legislators, Republican legislators in particular, they're selfish, they're self-serving, but if we the people continue to support them, we also doing exactly the same thing that they're doing. Even worse, because we are crafting a very miserable future for the next generation. And that's not acceptable, because if there ought to be progress, then this generation has to do things that guarantees this type of progress. And as it stands today, as I mentioned, both political parties have been involved in deceiving people, but Republicans in general, they have made it a strategy. And we're going to talk about some of those issues, and we'll show you that indeed they do it because they rely on the fact that their constituent will continue to support them, and as such, they have no reason to change. In 1996, a small network by the name of Fox News was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, Fox has become the greatest threat to our democracy, constantly bombarding the airwaves with false information, distortion of facts, and outright lies.
presented to its audience as news, Fox has created an army of blissful ignorance. According to a survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. To keep millions of people in ignorance not only prevents democracy from flourishing, but it also clears the path to authoritarianism, to dictatorship. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Let me finish by saying that democracy cannot survive in an environment where truth and facts do not matter. At Fox, truth and facts do not matter. Indeed, democracy in America is in jeopardy. It is a crisis the country can no longer ignore.
JFK said that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. Let's talk about Medicare Part D. Medicare Part D is the aspect of Medicare that covers drug purchases for elderly people, people who are retired, 65 and over. Now, Medicare has been around for, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 1930 something. 37, 39. And it was introduced as a way to alleviate the financial burden of people who have worked, paid into the system, now they retired. They get old, and as it is almost expected, the older we get, the more fragile our health becomes. Of course, it is because our immune system weakens a little bit, and our cells are being depleted. The regenerative cells are being depleted, and we're more prone to diseases, and so on. As such, as we move from younger age to older age, we become more in need of care, medical care, health care. So with more frequency of more need, the frequent need for healthcare, with that comes, well, drug purchases. And if you have family members, parents who are already retired, elderly, you most likely would know that that's the case, that they require more attention, more medical attention than younger generation. Now, I'm not sure how much you follow what's going on in Washington, but for those who have already reached retirement age, or who are beneficiary of Medicare, they most likely follow those kind of things pretty closely. And some of them, if not most, already aware of what the detail I'm about to tell you. Now, just because you're young or you're not anywhere close to retirement, and sometimes, and most of the time I would say, that's what Republican legislators rely on: ignorance. You don't know what's going on, or you don't care what's going on, so you continue to send those individuals back to Washington while they're doing things that are detrimental to your own interests. If you have grandparents, if you have parents who are retired, chances are you are also affected, impacted. Now, if you don't talk to them, you may not even know that because you're not at age yet, so you may not care. But the bottom line is your decision, your action to vote that same individual back in office to continue doing harm to you, to your family, is mind-boggling to me. So here's why I brought the Medicare Part D. There has been some conversation in Washington. Now, that's not the first one. You may recall, and I strongly suggest that you also take a look at the People Branch YouTube channel. We had we made several videos about entitlement cut. You may recall that at some point the conversation was front and center right after Republican passed a $1.5 trillion tax cut for the wealthy individuals. For the large corporation, Mitch McConnell was campaigning to cut benefits, and Medical Part D is one of those things. Of course, it falls under entitlement. Now, the reason that they like using the term entitlement is because it gives them coverage. Because every time that they use the word entitlement, they usually infer welfare, people on welfare. That's what they usually try to make as the center of why they're asking for the cut, why they want to make cut. They say people on welfare, that means people who don't want to work. But usually when they say people on welfare, it's usually Republicans. It's usually a code for black people. Although it has been proven for 2 decades, statistic data that we have of 2 decades clearly show that's not the case. But because there is always this undertone whenever Republicans are talking about the welfare system, and the reason they're always successful about cutting benefit is because they're able to convince their constituent that since it's blacks that are taking advantage of the welfare system, so it's okay to cut it. Now, I'm talking about Medicare Part D, although this conversation is a much broader conversation because it's not just about Medicare Part D. Now, pay close attention to this. And it's exclusively Republicans. There is no Democrat involved in this aspect. Republicans, even those who do not come out like Steve King to prove or to advertise that they are racist, and it's something that I already addressed here in this program, that everything that they do, whether it's senator, congressman, governor, mayor, everything that they do, laws, legislation, is geared towards being detrimental to minority. And the reason they always succeed is because whites in general tend to, hey, we don't have any problem with that. You tax, you penalize blacks. Hey, that's what we like. In fact, the second part of this program, when we talk about race relation, we will introduce to you a book written by a professor which strengthens this argument, which corroborates the argument we've been having here. So when Republican legislators, elected officials come to try to harm the constituent, what they do is they create a straw man. Blacks, they have to have a scapegoat in order to succeed in what they have in mind. So they always succeed. You see people, individuals running for public office, especially during presidential race, you'll find that those candidates, they have this language that they always use, saying that Rick Santorum was one of such people that I always single out, because there is this thing that it's not just an individual or two, it's the Republican legislators, elected official as a whole, that always capitalize on that aspect of the conversation by inferring that people on welfare are overwhelmingly black. As such, they tell you, we have to make sure that we cut entitlement. Now, here is the irony of the whole thing. Republicans borrowed $1.5 trillion, and they take that money, most of it, 1.2, they gave it to large corporation and wealthy individual. Now, did I say we the people are responsible to pay it back? Yes. The wealthy, the large corporation and wealthy individual do not have to pay a single penny back. That's the way the legislation was crafted. Now, they borrowed $1.5 trillion. They gave most of it to corporation and individual that already have plenty, that did not ask for anything, but they give it to them anyway. They call it tax cut. Now, right after the legislation was passed, Mitch McConnell and company went to all the network trying to drum the beat for entitlement cut. Now, think about that for a moment. The people that are on Medicaid, on Medicaid, Medicare, welfare. Those people, they depend on the government. People are not on welfare because they decide not to work. People do not collect food stamps because they just sit at home like the welfare queen introduced by Ronald Reagan, because they decide to do nothing. But not to deviate from the conversation, he is Republican, justifying borrowing $1.5 trillion, added to the debt, added to the deficit, and that money give it to those who already have. But at the same time, they say, for those who are struggling, those on Medicare, Medicaid, those who are retired, the veteran, they said, hey, they F with you. We don't owe you anything. As a matter of fact, we want to cut what you're currently getting. And that is the predicament that the country is in. You have a party that justifies borrowing money, add to the national debt, add to the deficit, to give that money to corporation that didn't ask for any, at a time, especially at a time when the country, when all those corporations were reporting record profit. Yes, you heard correctly. That money that the Republican, that legislation that they passed to give $1.5 trillion tax cut to large corporation and wealthy individual, that legislation was passed at a time when all corporations, major corporations, were reporting record profit. You don't know what that means? It means they're making money on top of what they spend. You spend $5, you get $10, $15 on top of that. That's what was happening at the time. Companies reporting record profit. That's the time that Republican legislators decided to give them even more money. But at the same time, they come to the public and they say, let's cut entitlement. You see any humanity on those people? You see any rational with those legislators? While they say, let's give to those who already have plenty, and they say, let's cut from those who actually are in need of. But what they present to you, and they call it entitlement. So let's give a tax cut to those who already have. Let's cut the benefits for those who are struggling to get by. That's the Republican way of legislating. And while they're doing that, Medicare Part D, which is what older people who are retired, people who are on Medicare, what they rely on for the government to subsidize their drug purchase, the Republicans say, let's cut that. Now, the Republican would never come to you and say they're going to cut Medicare. They say they're going to cut entitlement. It's a code word for saying, hey, just people on welfare. But what they don't tell you, entitlement actually comprises Medicare, Medicaid, expenses, all those expenses. It also includes health care for children. It also includes the support, the benefit to veterans. But when they present it to their constituent, they say entitlement cut. And say, yes, let's just cut those damn blacks out of this habit of welfare. Which brings me to the next topic, race relation in America.
Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relation in America. The goal is threefold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you.
Before we tackle the race relation, I ought to mention, I don't know if you noticed that most Republicans, the President of the United States, and in general, most Republicans, they go to one place and one place only in order to talk. Whatever that they have to say, they know that it's going to be amplified there. Now, it is a danger for our nation, for future generation. Because when you have a network that actually pretend to be a news network, but which is nothing other than a propaganda machine for a party, it creates a real problem for the country. Our democracy is in serious jeopardy. And the reason that Republicans choose to go to Fox is because they're not going to be challenged, whatever that they say. And the danger is because the audience, the viewers, believe whatever that they hear being said at Fox has to be true. And you have millions and millions of those individuals being bombarded with false information, distortion of facts, yes, sometimes even lies, and that's what they think is the truth. That is the greatest danger to any democracy. So it's not just the Republican legislators that are deceiving, that are acting to deceive their constituent. Networks like Fox do that too. Now, the Republican legislators, they do it so that they can keep their job. Fox, on the other hand, do it because it brings money to the network. So they're not going to try to educate the audience, because as far as they are concerned, the dumber the audience is, the better it is for the pocketbook of the executives. And they're not going to change that. Now, in a capitalist society, that's fine. Anybody can do whatever that brings you more money. That's really the whole point of capitalism. But at what cost? At what cost? The New York Times just published an article where it is undeniable there is this relationship between the Trump administration and Fox, a relationship you can only find in countries that have dictators, because you have the state media, in that case Fox, that everything that's positive about the individual in control you'll find in that media, in that network. Negative things are not broadcasted. You'll be hard pressed to find anything negative about Donald Trump at Fox. Now, there are a few people here and there that says a few things bad, but those people also have paid a price for that. As a matter of fact, a number of people who used to work for Fox now work for Donald Trump. And the same thing happened. People who left Donald Trump go and work for Fox. Now, the reason I brought that up is, again, in a capitalist society, people are free to do whatever brings them more money. But what happened when a whole nation, in that case half of a nation, is being led astray? Because conversation with individuals who have followed Fox clearly tells you that those individuals, they do not have the concept of truth and facts. And yet they can argue from today to doomsday that what they're telling you is what is. Now, to put it in perspective for you, during the Obama's tenure in the Oval Office, it started with 58% of the Republicans believed that Obama was a illegitimate president because he was not American. Now, you can put any spin on it, but how do you come to that? How does anyone, and we're not talking about just people, because sometimes when we're talking about people who are ignorant, it seems almost as if we're saying that people who didn't go to school, but that's not the case. 58% of the Republican Party are not those 58%, they're not people who didn't go to school. But how do they come to that conclusion? They watch Fox. Because day in, day out, that's the kind of thing that you find being discussed at Fox. In other words, Fox is dumbifying the Republican Party, and it has gotten to a point where those individuals who have become so ignorant, they don't even realize that's where they're at. That's why if anyone trying to talk them out of ignorance, they would curse you, they would just walk away, because there is no point of conversation. There is no room at all for conversation. So that is a danger to the nation. JFK said that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. The ignorance of one voter. Now we're talking about millions of voters. And this is a deliberate campaign by a network which calls itself news, and yet campaigns regularly to mislead, to misinform, to miseducate its audience.
In 1996, a small network by the name of Fox News was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, Fox has become the greatest threat to our democracy, constantly bombarding the airwaves with false information, distortion of facts, and outright lies presented to its audience as news. Fox has created an army of blissful ignorance. According to a survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. To keep millions of people in ignorance not only prevents democracy from flourishing, but it also clears the path to authoritarianism, to dictatorship. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Let me finish by saying that democracy cannot survive in an environment where truth and facts do not matter. At Fox, truth and facts do not matter. Indeed, democracy in America is in jeopardy. It is a crisis the country can no longer ignore.
War on Blacks is a topic in which we discuss race relation in America. For those of you who have joined for the first time, welcome. The point of the discussion is to explore possibility to eradicate racism, discrimination in America. Now, if you have not watched this program before, I strongly encourage you to go to the People Branch YouTube channel. Follow the steps that you see on the screen and browse for the titles Race Relation, War on Blacks, or Institutionalized Racism. That is, if you are interested in the discussion of race relation in America. Now, for any other topic, obviously, you have to look for other titles. We have almost 500 video archive on the People Branch YouTube channel, which discuss various topics, social, political, and some even scientific. So I strongly encourage you to take a look at the People Branch YouTube channel. Now, race relation is a complex topic. Now, we left off discussing the Civil War. What happened to blacks beyond the Civil War? That's where we left off. We presented some very grim pictures of life for blacks during slavery, and what happened during that time. Almost 400 years of hard labor, 400 years of being dehumanized, being humiliated, being executed by whites. Now, since the beginning of time, there has, and it's something that I point out almost on a regular basis, that what makes the discussion of race relations so difficult is because there are two camps. Whites who are racist, who discriminate, and whites who are not racist, who do not discriminate. Even during slavery, as I mentioned during the discussion, that we had whites who actually put their lives on the line to put an end to slavery. So there have always been this divide between in the whites society, that those who somehow cannot figure out the decent way to live, and the best thing that they could think of is to go the wrong way. So you had people who wanted slavery around, and of course those who did not. So we left the Civil War behind, and we asked the question, what happened to blacks after the Civil War? We are currently working on some sketches in order to give a visual picture of the time, of that time period, because most everybody who think or who talk about this, who talk about the end of slavery, has this mental picture of, well, blacks were slaves, they no longer, what else is there? Now, the end of the Civil War, the Emancipation Act that put an end to slavery, and remember yesterday I mentioned that we're going to take 1865 as the cutoff for end of slavery, but that wasn't the case. That was not the case, because there were still many states in the South that had slaves continue with to practice this inhuman habit. In fact, we have on record as late as 1965 that we had slaves, black slaves in America. So 1865 is used only for sake of this conversation. But that was officially, that was the official date that says, that's it, that's the end of slavery. Now, what happened beyond the Civil War? Now, I'm going to read to you, I'm going to read for you something that worth mentioning today. I'm certain that we will have to come back to continue the discussion about what happened beyond the Civil War. And it's not just a one-time conversation, because we're going to continue the march until we get to the present time. Well, actually not quite. We're going to continue the march, and from time to time we will do back and forth between the period of slavery and right after slavery, right after the Civil War, and today. We will try to make some comparison in order to bring to emphasize certain aspect of what's happening today versus then. Dr. Jonathan Metzl, he just published a book under the title "Dying of Whiteness." Now, it is exactly what it sounds like. Dying of whiteness. And the reason for the book actually almost put some real weight behind the conversation that I've been having here at the Fourth Branch about race relation. But it also reveals something else that I never thought about, which makes the conversation even twice as difficult. Dr. Jonathan mentioned that writing this book, he traveled almost exclusively in areas of the country that are mostly that have a I don't want to say population of whites, because he tried to talk to he talked to communities mostly white, obviously, and try to understand their views on different issues, and what he found is mind-boggling, because it's not just the fact that whites who are racist simply act that sentiment out in the presence of blacks. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to give you one of the examples that he mentioned. An individual who was dying, actually was terminally ill. Now, usually when people are in that predicament, they would accept any help that they can get, right? Or you think. But what he found was startling, to say the least. Now, that individual, the only reason I choose not to point to the state is because I'm fairly certain that they were people who would know who that individual is. But that individual, during the Obama tenure, remember ACA, Healthcare Act, remember that? Which provides coverage to people with pre-existing condition. In other words, that individual who was dying of cancer would be covered under the Healthcare Act. Now, I'm not certain whether that individual predicament had something to do with the fact that the governor of the state did not allow Obamacare to come to the state, because that was one of the Republican states. But the individual did not mention that as the reason for his argument. What the individual suggested, terminally ill, white individual, what the individual suggested was, I don't really care for, I'm paraphrasing here, I don't really care for the Healthcare Act if it means giving some of what I have to other people. Again, I'm just paraphrasing here. Now, in case you don't grasp, that's the title of the book, Dying of Whiteness. In case you don't grasp what this conversation is about, that means the person is saying, you know, I'm a white man, I'm dying, that's true. Being able to get coverage for pre-existing condition, fantastic. But it's at the cost of helping other people, mostly blacks, dying of whiteness. The individual preferred not to give his support. Now again, I don't know if the situation would have been different if the governor of that state were to let Obamacare get in. I don't know if the individual would have changed his mind. That there is no way for me to find that out, because the individual did not have the opportunity or the privilege to get coverage for pre-existing condition. Whether that was factored in his reasoning, there is no way to know. But the part that jumped has to send chill to your bone is someone dying who would prefer to die if it means that supporting the Healthcare Act opened the opportunity for others, blacks, to benefit. When you're talking about racism, this is the extreme version. Oh, by the way, that guy happened to have been someone dying, but his rationale wasn't unique either. The reason that Dr. Jonathan decided to title the book Dying of Whiteness is to show the extreme that white people would go to if it means sharing the wealth. helping others if those others happen to be blacks. It's unbelievable. I know it is unbelievable, but he is someone that preferred to die. If it means that supporting an act would help blacks, others.
Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relation in America. The goal is threefold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you.
I do thank you for spending the time with me. I hope that was enlightening, informative at the very least. Should you have any topic you would like us to talk about on the People on the Fourth Branch, please send us the request. We will research it and we'll talk about it. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon or evening, whichever that happened to be. Good day.
The Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York.
Good day.
What if hip-hop never existed? Question. Do you think there'd be as many heads screaming out, stop snitching? What if Adam and Eve ain't eat the fruit? You think we'd be able to see the truth? Or what if Albert Einstein ain't think of the nuke? Or Smith & Wesson ain't teach us to shoot? You think there'd be as many plays out there if there was no booth? Matter of fact, what if white man hung off a noose? Would it still be cool to say nigga? Or maybe we would make sick figures? Or would we wanna be crackers? And all the whites would be rappers. What if Martin Luther King survived? You think the New Orleans flood would've caused him to drop and die? I wonder what if and see what is. Stand back from the picture and ask yourself why. What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? If Christopher Wallace never got murked, how much money would Sean Carter be worth? What if Tupac never got hit with the flame? Would the game still have change filled with these lames? What if Jabari wasn't speeding down the street? What if the bullet Malcolm sent never hit Zeke? A black guy dropped off at a house instead of a stop? Or Ali never got bopped by the cops? What if the little homie Easy didn't die? Stand back from the picture and ask yourself why. What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on?